deep in the recesses of man's mind, yet lurking just on the edge, watching, waiting. A form stalks the mind, waiting for you to wonder a simple question. Have I seen this person before? Do I know the title of that book? Did this author write that or steal it? This is the scariest creature known to man, the rabbit hole. Okay, one sec. Let me grab the lights and we can get started. Hello all, I'm Brianna, and welcome to my geekdom. If you've visited before, you know that I normally take time to talk about my favorite things from across all mediums. Tabletop games, movies, television. And last week I had thought, why don't I do a Halloween episode? After the talk that I had specifically about themed episodes, I thought, what a great idea! And I really started to dig into what are my favorite scary things? Why do I love this book, that episode of television, this film? And it became much more complex than I had ever suspected. Until I landed upon the rabbit hole. I decided to try and focus. We'll do one episode of television, perhaps talking about season 2, episode 6 of Buffy, Halloween, thinking I'll keep things a little bit lighter. And then I went, well, what about my favorite movie? And I get judged for loving the 1999 The Haunting. And I started to really think, why do I love The Haunting? So I got out the idea notebook that I keep at work, and I got onto IMDb, and I was going to write down the director, the writer, get some basics, so that way, when I got home, I could watch the film and do kind of a deep dive on it. But in the process of looking at the information on IMDb, I am well aware that the 1999 The Haunting is not the best movie. You do not have to love something for it to be the best, for it to be your favorite. That's not a requirement. Academy Awards, prizes, recognition, that doesn't matter. It just has to be something that you love. So, as I was doing this, the headline of reviews started to catch my eye. And people really hate this movie. So I clicked on the button so I could read the reviews to find out exactly why. And I discovered, to my shock, though I must have known it, because when the movie came out, it was a time when on HBO, before large films were released, they would give us behind-the-scenes information ahead of time. And then on the VHS I know, and correct me if I'm crazy. Actually, no, don't correct me if I'm wrong on this. If you have the answer, I don't want to know it. But there was information about the actors, the writing, specifically the set because of the fireplace and its importance to the story. So I must have learned it then, like I learned that it was a remake of another movie from the 60s, also called The Haunting. But what the reviews taught me was that it is in fact based on Shirley Jackson's 1959 novel, The Haunting of Hill House. And so began my rabbit hole. Because that means The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix is an adaptation of the book or a remake of one of my favorite movies. Now, that is something I would have watched immediately when it came out in 2018. However, it was at a time where I had lost my mom and 2 of my grandmothers. So horror wasn't at the top of my list. At least not at that time. I wasn't ready. Several years later, when The Haunting of Bly Manor came out, I did watch that. Absolutely spectacular. love that miniseries. But I still wasn't ready, for whatever reason, for The Haunting of Hill House. And I think the specific reason for that was, again, it was released at a time where I was not me. I was dealing with depression and loss and a severe amount of change in a very short period. Which is funny for everything we're going to discuss today. Because down this rabbit hole, it made me go. The Haunting is a remake of The Haunting, which is an adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House. So The Haunting of Hill House is an adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House, or a remake of an adaptation. And that is what lies inside of my mind all of the time. So, for instance, when I spoke a while ago about my friend saying, hey, let's watch Peacemaker, and I told him how hard it would be for me to just watch season 2 of Peacemaker, and he assured me, and he was right. I trusted him. I did not have to go back and watch Suicide Squad in season 1, but it was so hard not to. And that's why at the end I'm like, nope, now I gotta go back and watch it, because there's psychological buildup in those stories, whether they're good or not, that lead us to where we are when we hit Peacemaker season 2. And that's exactly the thinking that took me down this road. So, what I'm here to talk about today is sort of my personal feelings on the original story, The Haunting of Hill House, and which of its 3 adaptations or reimaginings, depending on which one we're looking at, most successfully holds up the spirit of the original story Shirley Jackson was telling from my personal point of view. As a reminder for anybody who might be new as well, I am not a professional. These are just my opinions. You can agree, you can disagree, that is completely up to you. As long as you're not a jerk, please share your opinions. I'd love to hear from them, from you. This is how we learn new things. Now, if you've seen the 2018 Haunting of Hill House, you know that it is not a short miniseries. 10 episodes, each one an hour plus long. And both movies are almost 2 hours, including the 1963 one. This was a lot. I started Friday night when I got home from work. I watched the second half, so first 5 episodes Friday night, the next 5 episodes Saturday night, the 63 Sunday night, and then the 99 on Monday night. Reading the novella across the whole weekend. I could have done that in one sitting. It's only 200 pages. However, with all the rest of it, I fit in little bits and pieces here and there at work and was able to finish the last 100 pages on Monday morning. The entire time taking notes, highlighting. Let's average about, here, let me show y'all. This is all of the pages from the movie, the mini-series. It's all here. Between that and the book, we're averaging about 4 pages of notes per, and I think that's really being generous. And when I say per, I mean per episode. So 10 episodes, 4 pages each, 40 pages of notes there. It was a lot. It was so much. The rabbit hole would not release me, and every spare minute I have a job where I get a lot of downtime, and different coworkers, hey Brianna, what you reading? Don't ask. Don't ask. I told them about the rabbit hole, so when one coworker was like, oh, what you doing? Another one standing by going, no, don't, it's too much, she'll take you down with her. So I have Denise joining me today. I hope I don't knock her over, honestly. I just needed comfort. I needed somebody to support me while we do this. And then I had to stop and think, well, how are we going to do this? What's our setup going to look like for talking about a book, 2 movies, and a mini-series? I may in fact be doing 2 episodes about this. We'll find out, or just a insanely long episode. We'll find out what my computer lets me do, honestly, since I don't have a standard camera. It's just my innocent little laptop. Though for a fact, this is probably the first time I really appreciate it. It's doing some crazy things to my eyes in these glasses, and I hope it's freaking you out. So, I'm thinking that we are going to start at the top. I'm going to refer to each of these things by their date of release, and I will start with a summary of the book. I'm actually going to go through and do directed by, written by, cast. We're going to do a breakdown of each like that, and then focus on those specific elements that either are cross or are changed for what, again, the purpose I believe and I feel Shirley Jackson was trying to accomplish with her story. So, we're going to start with the book, released in 1959, written by Shirley Jackson. Our cast of characters include Dr. John Montague, anthropologist, Eleanor Vance, who has had experience with a poltergeist or possibly has telekinetic abilities herself, Theodora, who has ESP as it's referred to in the book, but could also be clairvoyant or an empath depending on how definitions have changed and which of these 4 things you are referring to. Then we have Luke Sanderson, referred to as Cad and heir of Hill House, Mrs. Montague, wife of Dr. John Montague, Arthur Parker, and Mrs. and Mrs. Dudley, the caretakers of Hill House. Next is the 1963 movie, which I will refer to as 63, The Haunting, directed by Robert Weiss, written by Nelson Gilding and Shirley Jackson, starring Julie Harris as Eleanor Lance, Claire Bloom as Theodora, Richard Johnson as Dr. John Markway, Ross Tamblyn as Luke Sanderson, Lois Maxwell as Grace Markway, Rosalie Crutchley as Mrs. Dudley, Valentine Daly as Mr. Dudley. As always, please forgive me for any mispronunciations. I can hardly read my own writing, let alone properly announce anybody else's name. Then, 1999, The Haunting, my favorite. This sent me down a different, much smaller rabbit hole, thank God, where I found out that 3 of my all-time favorite movies, The Haunting, Speed, and the original Twister, all directed by Jan de Bont, or Jan de Bont, depending on pronunciation. Again, I don't know. But the fact that those 3 are in my top favorites of all time prove just how much of a millennial I am, and I think say a lot about my personality. We have written by David Self and Shirley Jackson, Liam Neeson as Dr. David Morrow, Catherine Zeta-Jones as Theo, Owen Wilson as Luke Sanderson, Lily Taylor as Nell. I believe, though, that they say it because I took these off of IMDb, and that's why their order is what they are as well. But I think in the name, in the actual beginning, they refer to her fully as Eleanor Vance. So she goes back to her original name from the book, not Lance as referred to in 63. We have Bruce Dern as Mr. Dudley, and Marion Selders as Mrs. Dudley. The next one is a lot longer, from 2018's miniseries. Like, this is 2 post-it notes worth of names, guys. The Haunting of Hill House, which you can find on Netflix still. It says on IMDb created by Mike Flanagan, but when I clicked on the written by, it breaks it down. So we have Mike Flanagan, Shirley Jackson, and 6 others are credited as writers on different episodes. I'm not going to get into all of them, but I respect all the work that you guys did. So we have Michael Huisman, and Paxton Singleton as Stephen Crane. Carla Gugino, I love her so much. I feel so bad that I can't pronounce her name, as Olivia Crane. Henry Thomas and Timothy Hutton as Hugh Crane. Elizabeth Reeser and Lulu Wilson as Shirley Crane. Olivia, that's a character name. Oliver Jackson Cohen and Julian Hillard as Luke Crane. Kate Siegel and McKenna Grace as Theodora Crane. Victoria Pedretti and Violet McGraw as Eleanor Crane. Annabeth Gish as Mrs. Dudley. Robert Longstreet as Mr. Dudley. And an appearance by Ross Tamblyn as Dr. Montague. Now, let's start at the very beginning with a summary of the book. I bought it digitally because, again, I was at work when I started going down the rabbit hole. So I bought the least expensive version and started reading between guests. Our story begins with the introduction I didn't hit pause there. Excuse me. That's a little embarrassing. Oh well, what are you gonna do? Eventually learn how to edit videos, but in the meantime, no. So the introduction of Dr. John Montague. He is an anthropologist by trade, but his actual study is the supernatural. And his goal is to eventually find a real haunted house. But he became an anthropologist so that he wasn't judged as harshly for what he did for a living. He speaks to Mrs. Sanderson, the current owner of Hill House, renting it out because he had once heard about Victorians or what have you who spent entire summers as guests in houses, and they would go on supernatural hunts. And he thought, what a perfect idea. Let me try that too with people who have supernatural abilities and see what we can find, wanting to find a real haunting. He sends out letters to multiple people and gets a response from Theodora and Eleanor. Mrs. Sanderson adds in the requirement that a family member, in this case Luke Sanderson, must be present even though he is not the most trustworthy. He has gambling and drinking issues, and he stays out all night and does what rich, well-to-do men who never have to work in their lives do. And she is a bit ashamed of it, so he could at least help out in this small way. So we're given a very quick introduction to them. The main thing being Theodora is well known in the university setting for passing clairvoyancy tests, being able to read and predict what's on cards that are being held up in another room. She is described as an artist, a bohemian artist. The end. She has the time to come to Hill House because her roommate and her are currently having a quarrel, and it's going to be some time before they forgive each other. That's really all we're told. That, and she only goes by Theodora, no last name, share style. The longest introduction is given to Eleanor. Now, Eleanor's introduction I love. And it tells us kind of a lot. So I'm going to read this introduction once I find those notes again. I'll be right back. All right, here we go. A direct quote from the introduction. Eleanor Vance was 32 years old when she came to Hill House. The only person in the world she genuinely hated, now that her mother was dead, was her sister. That is an intense introduction. And been, I think, 2 years since I last watched The Haunting, because I got a friend of mine to watch it with me, who's not big on scary movies, and I was like, I think this one will be that right level of suspense, and with its CGI, which again, if you look at those reviews for the 99 one, are bad, because it was 1999, like, come on guys, have a little bit of grace. So I vaguely remembered at that moment, for something I love so much, well, I remembered that she was taking care of her mother, but did she really hate her that much? I didn't recall that at the top of my mind for that to be so hard. Like, that's the first thing you learn about her. She's 32, she hates her mom, she hates her sister, and then it goes on to talk about how her brother-in-law and niece suck too. Damn. But, you know, we all have family trauma, so what are you gonna do? Now, Eleanor's story will become central to the entire thing, and I will dig a little more deeply into that after I summarize the story, because she becomes our main narrator. She lives with her sister and brother-in-law. She had spent 11 years taking care of their sick mother, and the thing that stands out in her mind is hearing her mom banging, Eleanor, Eleanor, I need the bathroom. That is what Eleanor's life was for 11 years. So if she's 32, then that started when she was 21. She had no chance at a life in her 20s, only caring for the sick. She asks her sister, hey, can I borrow the car for the summer? Or she says, I'm going to take the car for the summer, and it's half mine. I paid for half of it. You paid for the other half. You always use it. I never use it. And her sister always references, well, I don't think you can take my car. It's half mine. I paid for it. We're going to go on vacation to the mountains. What if we need it? It's half mine. I never use it. It is my car. It is not your car. So this goes back and forth to the point that in the next scene, when Eleanor, she steals the car, but can you steal something that's half yours? So she sneaks out of the house. She's got her bag packed in a package with her, takes a cab, and knocks over an old lady, helps her up, apologizes, tries to give her money. The old woman refuses, but she does accept money for a cab ride home. Old lady goes off. Eleanor gets in the car and follows the directions given to her by Dr. Montague. It's going to get so confusing referring to which doctor is which. She follows the very specific directions, with one real difference is that she stops in the town of Hillsdale at the bottom before heading to Hill House, and she meets a waitress there. We'll get into a little bit of that later, again, when I focus more specifically on Nell and who she is. But that's the only thing that she does different, is stops in Hillsdale for coffee. She gets to the gates of Hill House, which are locked and bound. This is a giant, terrifying manor tucked in the hills, out of the way where nobody can see it. And Mr. Dudley makes his appearance, demanding to know who she is. Eleanor does not answer him. Why are you here? Eleanor does not give a direct answer. She just says, I'm expected. in this moment, I'm thinking Eleanor's kind of a bitch, honestly. If someone asks you a direct question, answer that question. I am very easily sidetracked. So throughout the journey, like, it's just so interesting and well done. The way that Shirley Jackson makes you go back and forth between, what the hell is Eleanor's problem? Oh, I get what Eleanor's problem is. Why is Eleanor being a jerk to this guy just doing his job? He eventually lets her in. She gets to the door of the house. She's the first one there. And Mrs. Dudley lets her inside and takes her up to her room. And Mrs. Dudley gives a speech that we hear throughout all 4 versions about how she sets dinner at 6. She leaves. She will not come back after dark. She and Mr. Dudley live 9. In one version, it's 9, and I think in another, it's 10 miles away in town. No one will hear you in the night. If you need help, nobody will come. I'll be back at 9 a.m. That's when I set breakfast. Her speech is repeated over and over again to each person who arrives, and over again in every version. It is one of the consistent things we see for who Mrs. Dudley is. Same with Mr. Dudley at the gate. There is a little bit of difference of what Mr. Dudley says in The Haunting at the Gate, but we'll get to that later. After Eleanor, I forgot who we were talking about for a second, Eleanor is shown to her room, the blue room. Theodora shows up and is given the green room. Then they go out exploring because they are terrified of this house. They don't know what it is, but it is scaring them. So they go outside to get some air, and they have become fast friends. Eleanor is normally the shy, quiet type. She does not open up as much and as quickly as she does with Theo. But yeah, they become friends. They go down to a creek where they are scared by a rabbit, which is another thing adding to why I think that Anya in Buffy, she's got reasons for being scared of rabbits, and I think it circles back all the way here to The Haunting of Hill House, but that's just something personal that I now believe. So eventually they return because the sun is setting and it's getting dark, where the doctor and Luke are now there. They have dinner. The doctor tells them the history of Hill House. They go to bed. First night, nothing. It's a little bit cold. Eleanor gets up in the night to grab another blanket, and she locks her bedroom door, goes back to sleep. In the morning, they're exploring all of Hill House, and the doctor is explaining how the house is set up with inner rooms that don't have any light. Only the outer rooms do. There is a veranda that goes all the way around the house. There is a tall tower that has a library and a spiral staircase. The doors, everything about the house. Theo is asking, why can't I see the tower from my bedroom? The way it's set up, I should be able to. And the doctor explains that when Hugh Crane, the man who built the house, everything is slightly off. Just ever so slightly. Like, instead of me being directly in the middle here, which makes sense, I'm over here, messing a little bit with your mind. The doors are not center, which is how they explain that the doors shut by themselves. Even though they continuously put things like heavy vases, books, chairs, things to prop the doors open, the doors are constantly closing. They go as a group to explore the entirety of the house, and they find in the conservatory a large statue that they are debating what it represents. Everybody is so far getting along fantastically. It's like when they speak, they are all in each other's minds. They are playful and having fun, even though they are there to help the doctor with his research as he explains it to them. They say that the statue, and statuary is very important across the board here. The statue, they say, is St. Francis curing the lepers. But then one of them says, no, I think that this is Hugh Crane. The three wives, which I'll get into his stories, the actual ghost stories in a few. And then somebody else says, well, look, doesn't this one kind of look a little bit like Eleanor? And Theo does something where she invites Hugh Crane to dance and starts dancing around the statue. They're having a lovely night, and then I believe the first night the doctor tells them the ghost story. But at the end of the evening, they all go to bed, much more comfortable in the house during the daytime. But that evening, Eleanor is awoken. She hears something. She hears knocking on the wall and Theo calling for help. Eleanor, Eleanor, and when Eleanor awakes, she first thinks that it's her mother. The 11 years of taking care of this woman kick in, but she figures out as she starts to wake up that it's Theo calling from the next room over. So she runs through their connecting bathroom. She finds Theo huddled, scared. The knocking is coming from everywhere. It's moving around the room. It sounds like it's going up and down the hallways. And Eleanor asks, did you lock your door? Because she had locked her door. And Theo says, yes, I did. So the door starts to move. They hear the knocking. The knocking goes up higher on the door. And they're frightened and it gets cold. And they scream from fear. Eventually it stops and you hear Luke and the doctor in the hallway and they come in. They're let in by Eleanor. They want to know what happened. They didn't hear anything because they were outside. Because a dog, a wolf, a large black animal had run through the house. The doctor saw it. He woke Luke. They chased the animal outside and they were trying to find, but there was nothing. And when they came in, they heard no sounds. They only heard Eleanor and Theo screaming. They stay together for the evening, eventually falling asleep. The women laugh it off like this is ridiculous. How did we think there was something scary? And in the morning, they head downstairs. I believe this is the point where Nell feels like, oh no, that might come in later. I think I'm confusing the movie. Or it happens a few times where she feels like she isn't seen. We're in her head so much it's hard to keep it all straight, especially when you have 4 different versions. But they go down and they have breakfast and they talk about their day and they're feeling calmer and more relaxed. But when Luke goes out, because they had made a rule, nobody goes anywhere alone, Luke goes out to grab something. He goes to grab coffee, I think it is, and he finds written on the wall in the hallway, "Help. Welcome home, Eleanor." And Eleanor, it's written in chalk. Nobody claims responsibility. Eleanor begins to freak out. Why am I being singled out? The house knows my name. Why is it calling to me? Please, Theo, tell me you did this. Luke, tell me you did this. And this is when Theo and Nell start to argue for the first time. And Theo says, you're just doing this for attention. And the doctor tells her and Luke are thinking, oh, that's it. She's trying to calm down Nell by making her mad. But Nell is seeing this as an actual attack against her and that their personalities are clashing. And it happens multiple times. They go back and forth from getting along really well to now there is that undercurrent of animosity between the two women. That evening, Theo's room is covered in paint. but Theo swears it's blood. Nell believes it's blood. It's all over her clothing. She screams for help. Nell, the doctor, Luke, they all appear. They all see it, hoping that it is paint, red paint, but they all believe it to be blood, and they send Theo into Nell's room where she is crying and she's getting this stuff all over Nell's bed. And this is the second point in time in the book. Nell refers to her as wicked. There are multiple religious references that I don't get. If you have a religious background, I am sure it means a lot more to you. I just know it is there. It's an indication that religion was a very strong part of Nell's upbringing, and she, whether she agreed with it or not, has sunk into her mind, so that as she's going, what one assumes is she's stressed and she might be going a little crazy from the pressure of the house, especially at night. She is leaning back on these religious themes and things that she was called, because there's a moment earlier when they're getting along where Theo paints Nell's nails red, and she says this is absolutely wicked. And in that moment, it's kind of like, oh, she's seeing how it's not a wicked thing, but this is what her upbringing would have referred to. But now she's saying it again in her mind, directing it at Theo, saying that Theo is wicked. There's a moment, it was either in the first night or it might be in this moment. No, maybe this is the third night. Again, there's so many and they all kind of go over different amounts of time. It's no longer than a week, and most of them, with the exception of 2018. But there's a moment, it was earlier in the day. They take a rest after lunch. That's right. That's when the nail painting happened. And Nell asks Theo, because Theo says something about the argument that she had with her quote-unquote roommate. She says, yeah, we had an argument. And Nell goes, oh, are you married? And Theo just looks at her and goes, no. And Nell apologizes because she feels like she's crossed a line based on the way that Theo answers. So that night, they're sharing a room, and they hear noises, babbling, mumbling, crying. It sounds like a person asking for help, then sounds like chanting, and then it sounds like a baby crying. And Nell is holding Theo's hand, and she feels the pressure, and she's so scared, and she's whispering to Theo, is it over yet? Is it over yet? They're hurting a baby. They're hurting a child. I can't let them hurt a child. And then she notices that Theo wakes up, and she's on the other side of the room, and she's telling Nell to wake up, that what are you upset about? What's going on? And Nell screams, whose hand am I holding? Whose hand was I holding? No idea. There's no one. There's nothing. Theo was not near Nell. And they spend another restless night. The next day, the tension between the two women is even stronger. And they, at the same time though, everybody's enjoying the house, enjoying being where they are. They're having nice times together. Theo, Nell, and Luke go for a walk, and they're supposed to be going down to the brook while the doctor works on his notes and all the notes that everybody's been taking for him for his research and his book. And Nell and Theo are a bit at odds. They go off. They tell Nell to move ahead of them on the walk, and when Nell turns around, Theo and Luke are gone, and she can't find them, and she starts wondering when she does find them from a distance, are they talking about me? Am I the odd one out? Why aren't I included? Why wasn't I a part of this? There are different moments throughout the book where she feels isolated and judged, and like the others are constantly talking about her. When they were exploring the house, they had come to the library that she refused to go into while the others did, because she felt fear. It smelt. She couldn't tell what it was, but there's a presence and she wouldn't go in. The others went in without her, and she was feeling judged then too. She feels judged with her name on the wall. She feels alone and anxious, and as if people can't see her or don't want her around. There's a moment where Nell and Theo argue again, and Theo tells Nell that she's making a fool of herself, throwing herself at Luke, and she doesn't. They have one conversation, I think in the whole book, where it's just the two of them alone, and in Nell's mind, she's thinking, if I ask this question, will he think I'm coming on to him? Will he be judgmental of me? Does it seem like I want him? So Theo does judge Nell on that, and she calls her out on it later on. And in the evening, as they are tense with each other, the doctor mentions that his wife will be coming on Saturday, which is a day away because they've lost sense of time, that his wife will arrive, and Theo and Nell go out for a walk in an attempt to come to terms. They never really do, but since the beginning, when they first walked down to the brook, they had been talking about going on a picnic, and as they make the foolish decision to go out of the house at nighttime, they come across a picnic. It's daytime. There are parents and children and puppy, and they are having fun and giggling, and then all of a sudden, Theo yells at Nell to run. Just run. Don't look back. Don't look back. Keep going. And suddenly the picnic is gone, and it's nighttime, and they're screaming, and they're trying to get out of this garden, but they can't. And the doctor and Luke come, and they bring them inside, and there is again no explanation. When the doctor's wife shows up, Mrs. Montague, she arrives with Arthur Parker, who we come to learn, we're never disclosed as to what their relationship is. Is Arthur a friend of the doctor's, or is he purely a friend of Mrs. Montague's? I personally think the two are sleeping together, but she demands to sleep in the most haunted room. That's where she wants to be, so she can connect with the spirits. She fully, 100% believes in the supernatural. Now, the most haunted room in the house is the nursery, which when they explored the home, they found a cold spot, a freezing cold spot that they are unable to determine just how much colder it is. Every time they try to measure it or put a thermometer in, they are frozen so cold that they can't get accurate readings. So they made the decision to just never go into this room. They keep it locked. So she demands to go into that room and sleep there. She is incredibly condescending, which there are moments in the book where I feel like Dr. Montague himself is also condescending, but it's more in that professional academic way of I know things and you don't. It's not cool, but it's an explanation. Mrs. Montague just sucks, in my opinion. She just sucks. So she keeps calling Luke that young man. She never refers to Theo or Nell by their names. And she tells the doctor, you don't listen to me. I said I'd be here. Why are you guys eating dinner? You should have held dinner for us. I promised I'd be here. Just horrible. She completely mows over him and his scientific study, because he specifically states at the beginning that He doesn't want anything that could possibly be construed as made up to be included. He wanted this to be as legitimate a scientific study as he could possibly have, which is why he went through specifically listed names and did research to find Nell and Theodora and others who never replied or showed up. But his wife, who very annoyingly refers to a planchette, again, apologies if I don't pronounce the word right, as planchette. She calls it planchette. Planchette, Arthur and I are going into the library so that we can have a conversation with the dead. The planchette said this, planchette that. Like, it is an object. It is that little triangular or heart-shaped piece that comes with a Ouija board. And they go into the library, just her and Arthur, because she's attuned to the spirit world. Nobody else could possibly be attuned to the spirit world. They attach a pencil and they ask questions. Apparently, everywhere she goes, there's a dead nun. Is that who you are, Denise? Did I find the sparkly rainbow head of a nun who is very, very small inside of a Dollar Tree? And there's Monk. And they can't get answers, but they do get a clear message. Help. Welcome home, Eleanor. Eleanor. Home. Home. Neither of them on the page that we know about, because almost consistently since the moment that Eleanor arrives at the house, we are reading the book from her perspective. She's our narrator, so we have to trust what she says. So if she wasn't around when somebody told them about Welcome Home, Eleanor, then there's no way we would know it. So she is frightened again. They go to bed. Beforehand, Arthur says, I'll be patrolling. I have a revolver. Nobody worry. And Mrs. Montague goes into the nursery to sleep, complaining the entire time about how it smells and nobody had roomed the air out, and she'll talk to Mrs. Dudley about that, because how can they keep a house like this? The doctor and Luke tell Eleanor and Nell to meet them down in the doctor's room. They are going to stay all together that night in one room. Mrs. Montague and Arthur would not hear a word, but they are worried about how Arthur is probably going to shoot somebody. As the four of them are all in the doctor's room, the pounding starts again. The door looks as if it's breathing, bending on its hinges. There is a storm raging outside. The house is alive, and the doctor wants to get to his wife, but they know if they open the door, whatever is on the other side can get them. So all they can do is stay put and hope, just hope that the others are smart enough not to open their doors to the sound, to whatever could be in the hallway. And Nell is wondering, is it starting all over again? Do we have to go through it all from the beginning? And she's worried that now that Mrs. Montague is there, she's going to replace her. And what purpose does Nell serve? How long is this going to go on for? It pounds and pounds and knocks, and the door is alive, and they are coming, and then it is the morning. Arthur and Mrs. Montague have heard nothing. They slept wonderfully. The others are restless and worried, and the doctor is trying to send his wife away, and Nell is stalking the others from the shadows, wondering what are they talking about. Are they judging her? Do they want her there? Now that Mrs. Montague is there, is she important to this study? What purpose does she serve? What are Luke and Theo talking about? What could they possibly have to say? And at no time does anybody wonder where is Nell? Because they all assume that she is with somebody, that she is not alone. Except she is. She wanders the house by herself. And in the evening when they go to sleep, she and Theo share a room, but she unlocks the door because she hears it calling to her, and she's going to go to the library. There's something in the library, and she can tell them that she's going to the library to get a book, even though she hadn't and swore she would never go into the library. She's going to go to the library. She goes, but she starts knocking on everybody's doors, trying to see, do they hear this? Do they care? Do they know? Are they wondering where I am? Giggling and laughing, and she ends up down in the conservatory dancing with the statue of Mr. Crane. And she's going to get to the library. She's going to go, but she hears them calling, Eleanor! Eleanor, where are you? Eleanor! Theo woke up and Eleanor wasn't there. She hears the doctor. She hears Mrs. Montague. What is that girl doing? And Eleanor ends up eventually running from them, playing games, and she's in the library. And she goes up the spiral staircase and up, and it's rickety, and she stops. But this is it. This is where she's meant to be. So she goes up and up until she's at the top, and the others are at the base, and they call for her, and she's so close. She's at the top. She's at the trap door. This is where one of the people in the house in the story ended their life, but it's so beautiful here. And Luke comes up the spiral staircase. They're all calling for Eleanor to come down and be safe, and they are terrified and worried for her safety. And she's not happy about it, but she listens, and she follows Luke down the spiral staircase until they are safe on the ground. And Mrs. Montague tells the doctor that Theo shouldn't be there, except Theo is fine. It's Nell. This woman does not know who anyone is, and Mrs. Montague blames John for not properly introducing them when she ignored everybody. But this is it. This is the last straw. The doctor is worried. Everybody is worried about Nell's state of mind. She is not safe in this house, and they want to send her away. I think they wait until the morning. It could be right then. Again, 4 of the same story. It kind of blends together. But they're going to send Nell away. It's not safe for her in that house, and they know it. They pack her in the car, and Luke is going to drive her, but Nell gets into the driver's seat and swears she's fine, but she wanted to stay. She even asked Theo at some point, what if I come live with you? Because she admits to not having a home to go back to, that everything she owns is in the suitcase she brought and the carton that she has on the back seat. And they tell her, I'm sorry, you can't be here. Go home to your sister. Even though, and this is the one time I like Mrs. Montague, she says she had called Theo's sister and was, Nell's sister is terrible. The fact that someone like Mrs. Montague can clock how horrible a human being Nell's sister is just amazing. So Nell gets packed in the car, and she thinks to herself as she's driving away, I can't go. I have nowhere to go. This is my home. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay. This is where I belong. And she drives, and she drives, and she drives right into a tree. And that is where the others find her body. Nell is dead in a car crash against an oak tree. Always to remain home at the house at Hill House. Welcome home, Eleanor. Now, as I stated, this is probably going to be a 2-part episode, both parts being incredibly long. That is the summary of the book, And the reason why I wanted to do that is so that when we get into the multiple stories, there's so much that I didn't cover in those moments in that retelling, because it's all a little bit different and it all means something different. There is so much to dive into, but that is the main point of the original book. So that is our starting point in 1953 with Shirley Jackson's story. I might not have been completely in order. I do highly suggest reading this book. Earlier this year in my book club, we had read We All Live in the Castle, which is hailed as Shirley Jackson's masterpiece, the last thing she wrote before passing. I think I personally gave it a 4, but like a low 4, like a 3.75. And that's not from the writing or from the story, but more about how over time, what we view now, like basically the villagers are coming to kill the beast, and we've seen it many times, so it didn't hit me strongly. It probably would have hit me way stronger back when it was originally written in the 60s versus now. This, however, as a study on mental health versus are hauntings real, the way that as I believe I just mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, you go back and forth on loving and hating Eleanor. This, if somebody asks me, hey, have you read Shirley Jackson? I'm sending them to The Haunting of Hill House first. This is where you should start, in my opinion. This was a 5-star read. So now we're going to break down elements across all of the versions, starting first with the ghost story. The actual ghost story that is being told to each of the people in each of the tellings. So in 53, the ghost story that we receive is that a man named Hugh Crane builds Hill House for his wife and 2 daughters. All go unnamed. Hugh Crane's name is the only one that is mentioned during the story. His first wife dies before even seeing the house. There is a bend in the road right before you lay eyes on the house. The horse gets spooked. The carriage overturns and hits a tree, and the wife is brought lifeless into the home. He remarries, and the second wife dies from falling down the stairs. That's all that's mentioned. He has a third wife who dies of consumption in Europe. When Hugh and his third wife left for Europe, he sends his 2 daughters to live with their aunt. Eventually he dies, and the daughters inherit the house. They argue over what to do about it, the oldest having been crossed in love and is single while the youngest is married. The oldest wants to move into the house. The youngest wants to sell the house. Eventually the oldest wins out. She moves home and dies of pneumonia in the nursery where she moved back in. But before her death, she had hired a companion, a woman from the village, to come live with her. The sister, upon hearing of her older sister's death, tries to sue and get the house back because her older sister left it in the will to her companion. There's a rumor that goes around Hillsdale that the companion was meeting with a man as the older sister lay dying upstairs, banging on walls, calling out for help, but no help came. Now, it's believed that, due to loneliness, the villagers went from, here's someone we love, good for them, they got this house, to how dare she become the lady of the manor. Didn't you hear how she was responsible for Hugh Crane's daughter's death? She killed her. So the companion, out of loneliness, climbs the spiral staircase in the study in the library to the top, and hangs herself. Now, it took me, and I was surprised, and I assume it took me a while again because these ghost stories are all a little bit different, but that one particularly stands out to Nell's story, except she's the younger sister. The older sister sells the mother's home and forces Nell to live with them, takes everything from Nell, and Nell has nothing. In 1963, the film, which is the closest adaptation, scene for scene, word for word, as the 1953 book, does make changes. Hugh Crane is stated as having hated people, and that is why he built the house slightly off, where none of the angles line up properly. 90 degrees are really 91 degrees. It's all so slightly off because he was purposefully screwing with the minds of the people he hated, making sure no one would want to come visit. But he loved his wife, and he loved his daughter, Abigail. His wife sadly dies in the carriage accident before ever seeing the house. Hugh Crane dies of pneumonia. No, he drowned later on in Europe. Abigail lives in the nursery and dies in the nursery at old age of pneumonia, having hired a companion. The companion is held responsible in the eyes of the villagers for Abigail's death because it's widely believed that she was meeting a man in the garden as Abigail called out for help. Eventually, the companion goes to the library, climbs the spiral staircase, and hangs herself. Next, we have 99. This is where the story differs almost entirely. In the book, we get a lot of fairy tale references from Nell before she ever reaches Hill House. In her car ride there, she daydreams, as I'm sure most of us do. I know for a fact that when I am on a long ride, I'll daydream, I'll think about what the things that could be, or what if this was different? What if I lived here? We've all done it. So Nell does that in her car ride. And a lot of that imagery is based on fairy tales. The witch who lives in this house, or what if there was knights riding down from the hill carrying banners on white horses. And you don't get or hear about that fairy tale element again until you get to the 99 film. This is when Dr. Morrow, again, so many doctor names, Dr. Morrow tells the story, and he keeps it simple. Hugh Crane was a textile tycoon who built a mansion for his young wife and their future children. He wanted a huge place for kids to play and be happy, and for them to live happily ever after. But sadly, they were sterile, or all of the children who were born were all stillborn. And Nell says, oh, it sounds like a fairy tale. As we all know, true fairy tales, the original stories, have dark endings. They were meant to teach us not to trust strangers. Don't follow people into the woods. Don't take candy from strangers. It's all there. That's it. It's a very short, simple story that the doctor shares. What separates it is that as the film continues, as Nell experiences paintings on the wall saying, "Welcome home, Nell," she starts to dream. She discovers more of the story. The spirits in the house speak to her, and it's children asking for help. It's the ghost of a woman who looks similar, not identical, but similar to her, calling out for help. And Nell discovers that Hugh Crane had a second wife. I had her name somewhere. Caroline. Her name was Caroline. So Caroline killed herself by hanging after her child. Or was it the first wife who killed herself? One of them killed themselves. They hung themselves at the top of a spiral staircase, except it's in the conservatory, not in the library. Amazing set. Again, the set of the 99 film is just gorgeous. Watch it for that alone. But Nell discovers through the help of the spirits of the children and Caroline that Hugh Crane took children from the textile factory, said they died while working, brought them to his home, and basically killed them there. For whatever reason he chose, whatever crime they committed. Across all of the stories, it's laid out that Hugh Crane was highly religious, and that his religion put him as the head of the household with power over everybody in it. And they had to view things in dark, terrifying ways. The worst definition, the worst imaginings of the Bible are what this man believed in. So that is that ghost story there. And finally, in 2018, in the miniseries, there really isn't one. Because, as you might have noticed when I was listing the character names at the beginning, it is not Hugh Crane who built the house, but Hill House. Hill is the name of the family that lived there. The Hills are the ones who built the house. And now the Cranes are moving in 1992 with the idea to flip the house. They are architects and contractors, and they are going to rebuild and fix up this house and make a fortune so that they can build their forever home. You have Hugh and his wife Olivia and their 5 children. The eldest is Stephen, Shirley, Theo is the middle, and the 2 youngest are twins, Eleanor or Nell and her brother Luke. There is, as I said, no real ghost story there, but the 2 stories you hear, like, fully, Luke eventually finds a hidden cellar, and they go to take out the wall, and Hugh hears scratching behind the wall that he and Mr. Dudley, who's helping him repair the house, he's the he and his wife maintain the house, but they're fully ready to help build it with the idea that whoever buys the home, they stay on. That's it. That is always the rule. The Dudleys are always part of the deal. Now, when they eventually get the wall torn down, they find that somebody had built themselves in. Not that someone else, Cask of the Armadillo, I always screw up the name of that. The way in Poe, somebody else put him in the wall. No, this man, his body is found holding the little thing to do, when you're laying bricks and whatnot. You all know what I'm talking about. Anyways, he's found inside the wall, and when they call the sheriff goes, "Oh, you guys just solved a cold case." He was believed to have just run off because of his debt. But for some reason, this man built himself into the wall to hide from something in the basement of Hill House. The next story you hear is of Charles Hill, who was clinically insane and met his wife Poppy in an insane asylum. When they were both released, they moved into Hill House, eventually dying there. Again, I've got 40 some odd pages of notes. I don't think it was ever really clear, except for Mrs. Dudley tells Stephen that this woman was crazy. Now, there is also a slight moment or mention of a woman dying after falling down, you guessed it, the spiral staircase. And I think they mentioned somebody being hung. No, one woman, same as before, just falls down a staircase. And then they mention someone being hung from the top of the spiral staircase. Now, what I love about the multiple ghost stories that are told across all four is that they are very representative of their time periods. So, for instance, when we look at 59 and 63, these are very cerebral. This is questioning, as Shirley Jackson had intended, is Nell crazy or is this house haunted? Everybody experiences different things. Theodora specifically sees something in the garden in the book that Nell doesn't, and Nell just trusts her to run. The knocking, Theo calls out for Eleanor's help. They experience a lot of the same things, it's just that Nell feels it differently. It's targeted more at Nell than it is at anybody else, and in the end, you're questioning her sanity. So, in the book, with Nell going up the spiral staircase, there's nothing there. They're waking her from whatever state she's in to get her down the stairs. At the end of the movie, Grace, the doctor's wife Grace, who had come to stay, she does not believe in ghosts at all in the movie. She thinks that her husband, Dr. Markway, is absolutely nuts for believing in ghosts. She has to stay in the scariest, most haunted room in the house, so they put her in the nursery just like they do in the book, but it's to prove that there's nothing there, versus the book where Mrs. Montague, again, so many doctors, and they all stayed with M names. Mrs. Montague wanted to express love and understanding to the spirits to help them move on, which Theo, Luke, Nell, and the doctor are all like, shut the fuck up, these things want us dead. They are not for it. Grace Markway in the movie wants to stay there to prove that they're all crazy. And then she disappears. Gone. They cannot find her. So when Nell loses it in the night and she's in this fugue state and she climbs the top of the stairs, it's hinted the doctor is the one who follows her up and is trying to convince her to come back down before the stairway collapses. A trapdoor opens. There's a woman. Nell screams and faints and the woman is gone. And then when she's in the car, when they're sending her away because nobody else saw what she saw or experienced what she experienced, she sees a ghost. She's thinking to herself, first, I don't want to go, I want to stay. And she lets go of the wheel, and the wheel gets pulled towards a tree, it looks like anyway. And she says, what are you doing? No, I don't want this. I don't want to die. And then somebody runs in front of the car, and it's Grace, and then the car crashes because she doesn't want to kill this woman. And Grace now believes that something happened in that house. She says she heard something. She was running from something. She got lost. She found her way into the attic, and she has no idea how she got into the yard, but she specifically says she saw Nell turn the wheel to crash herself into that tree. So from Nell's perspective, it looks like she's trying to avoid Grace. From Grace's perspective, it looks like she's purposefully killing herself. The two stories lean differently. They're the closest, they are the most similar, but the difference in only having one wife, only having one child, it's showing there's not as much contention in the history of the house. And Grace versus Nell in the movie is showing that there's a lot more contention there, because it's hinted at. Theo says that Nell is into Luke in the book. Theo in the movie says that Nell is into the doctor. So when the doctor's wife shows up, that's her last straw and she loses it and kills herself over it. The ghost story there, what it is showing in 59 and 63 and that time period, is that there's not always an answer. Things are more open-ended, and even when it looks one way, it can still be something else. It just depends on perspective. When you hit 99, this is, and if you are part of a book club with me, or one of my friends watching a show, I think something that very much has stuck with me. I like endings. I like to have a clear-cut story and reason why. Like, it can be full of questions all the way throughout, but when it comes to the end, I want closure. I don't always need it. I want it and I like it, but there are moments where it makes sense not to have it, and that is what 59 and 63 do. It's totally fine not to have answers there. 99 is different. What they wrote, they changed the story. They changed the rules. They make Nell a very clear-cut hero. She is, and it's funny because this is actually a trope I love. I love the trope where the woman looks insane and you have a man of some sort who is like, oh, what an adorable crazy lady. I'll protect her from herself. Except there really is a ghost. There really is a killer out there. And now the man is fucked and the woman saves the day and he just looks like an asshole. That is something I love. And that is what they do in the 99 film, is they change the story. They make Nell a descendant of Hugh Crane. She takes a necklace similar to what I am wearing, actually, but there is a C in the center. She takes that from her mother's literal deathbed and she wears it into the house, and you eventually find a painting of Caroline wearing the same necklace because it was hers. So Caroline, yeah, that's where it is. Caroline died in childbirth. The first wife hung herself. And Nell is that descendant. Caroline made sure the baby got out of the house to protect them from Hugh Crane. And now Nell has returned to her home. She's there to help the children. She's there to put an end to Hugh Crane's dangerous and violent story and end the curse of Hill House. There is a clear, distinct story that is very obvious in 90s films and early 2000s, especially among remakes. Like, we like to see a reason why. You can even look at Rob Zombie's reimagining of Halloween. Halloween is great, and one of the things I had originally wanted to talk about when I was trying to figure out how to make a Halloween episode, because the original Halloween works because there are no answers. Michael Myers just is, and he is terrifying because of it. Rob Zombie gave us reasons. He gave us a psychological background and breakdown. That is what 99 does. It gives us reasons. It gives us a clear story. And again, it is very telling of time and what things were like and how stories were told in the 90s and early 2000s. Then we hit 2018 in the miniseries. And suddenly, everything is a little more timey-wimey. Now, as I said before, this is very clearly full of spoilers. But if you are the most interested in the 2018 Netflix miniseries from Mike Flanagan, stop listening now, because I am about to ruin it When I say it is timey-wimey, Doctor Who fans know what I am talking about. I listed 2 actors' names for each character, except for the Dudleys, because they are able to play both or all ages. It travels through multiple years. We open with adult Stephen reading the opening passage from the actual book, because in the miniseries he is an author who wrote The Haunting of Hill House, and it is supposedly a document of how his family grew up in a haunted house and what they went through after the possibility of having a father who killed their mother. Maybe. But then it's revealed that she killed herself. Or did she? And it flashes back and forth from adulthood to childhood and back again to a few years ago, telling the story out of time for how they get to where they are and who they are. And my God, could I talk for hours about each episode and each character. But as I had mentioned, there's no overarching ghost story. There's a few things here and there because this house is, I believe in the movie, they say 130 years old, and people have to die somewhere. Just how it is. We all gotta go at some time, and we all have to be somewhere when we do. Stephen doesn't believe in ghosts. He didn't see what his little sister Nell and what his little brother Luke saw. Theo is different. He doesn't understand why. He refuses to believe in ghosts. To him, it is all a disease of the mind. It is all psychological. He says that their mother was bipolar and he witnessed a manic episode when he painted this beautiful vanity for her and learned about Poppy and how it used to be her vanity from Mrs. Dudley. When they show Hugh waking Stephen up in the middle of the night, Stephen is the last person out of the house, and Hugh's holding him and telling him to close his eyes tight and not look at anything, and the only thing he does see for one quick glimpse is his mother running after them, or trying. Really, she's hobbling because she's injured and he doesn't understand why. And Hugh gets them in the car and Luke yells up, "Abigail's in the window," and Stephen doesn't know anything. Shirley has experiences in childhood with the death of kittens that she found and tried to save. Then her mother commits suicide, and she ends up growing up to be a mortician. Luke and Nell. Luke has completely become dependent on drugs. He is an addict. He is in and out of different rehabs. He cannot manage. He doesn't understand. He's been dealing with the trauma of, from what we know at the moment in the beginning, his mother's death. And Nell has lost her twin because of his addiction. She suffers from sleep paralysis and waking nightmares, and nothing has ever been right or the same since they left Hill House, or honestly since they moved into Hill House. Theo, the middle child, has in the beginning what we are led to believe are intimacy issues. She constantly wears gloves and she throws herself into purely sexual relationships so she doesn't have to feel or deal with any of her childhood trauma. As the story goes on, and it flashes back and forth each episode, focusing on one individual character, starting with Stephen, Shirley, Theo, Luke, Nell, Hugh, and then they come together at the end because Nell has died. She's committed suicide, and they've all gathered at Shirley's for Nell's funeral, and they let it out the way that families do when they lose someone, or I honestly hope that they do. I wonder if in my own family's case it would have been better at moments to really yell at each other, but every family connects and communicates differently. Some of us do it in a quieter manner. Some of us don't want to listen to others at all, and it's all shown. Let me just check real fast. Screw it, I tried. Again, 40 pages of notes, but I want to say it's all shown in the episode Eulogy, which is by far, if I'm right about which episode it is, my favorite. The filming of that episode, Mike Flanagan's choice for near continuous shots moving from character to character as they are yelling at each other and trying to deal with this trauma, is just beautiful. It's absolutely gorgeous. Anyways, Theo, all of them, they're all dealing with what we believe to be, from the way it's shown, just regular trauma, if there is such a thing. But as it continues, and as they are timey-wimey and jump back and forth, and each character is shown, it explores their different moments with spirits. Poor Nell is haunted by the broken neck lady. She's woken at night from the broken neck lady at the end of her bed or hovering above her. She eventually gets married, and her husband Arthur dies of an aneurysm, but the way that he dies, when he has the aneurysm, she is awoken. She is stuck in her sleep paralysis. She sees him and his neck goes, and he dies. And all she can see as he collapses and she's unable to move or assist him is the broken neck lady. Luke is haunted by the man in the bowler hat. Now, I love me a good hat. I love a good bowler hat even more. But this ghost, he floats 6 inches above the ground, and he is insanely tall. His cane drags on the ground, and from Luke's perspective, he is the knocking at each door, looking for his hat. And he gets it, and he collects it from young Luke, except Luke makes a mistake. At 6 years old, he did his best to hide and stay quiet, except he makes a sound. And the bowler hat man leans down and makes eye contact, and for the rest of his life, Luke is haunted by this ghost and uses drugs to deal with it and to not have to see it. And what we eventually learn, the thing that destroyed Nell and Luke the most, is that one night, they were woken up by their mother, taken to a room to have a tea party. Luke had a friend staying. She drinks the tea, and young Abigail dies from strychnine poisoning. They watched their mother kill another little girl, knowing that if they drank that tea as well, if their father hadn't arrived in time, they would be dead too. That is what they wait until the very end of the show to show you exactly what happened that night. The thing that they saw, surely Olivia, the mother, was supposed to have been gone because she suffers from migraines, and they're worse in this house, worse than anything else, worse than they've ever been. Theo discovers that she is an empath, that she's a clairvoyant. When she touches things, she feels and knows things that she shouldn't. She finds her father hands her a box as they're cleaning out the kitchen, tells her to throw away anything that doesn't seem like it's worth anything. And in this box, she goes, no, this is worth something. And he opens it, and it's a ridiculously expensive bottle of wine. She walks into the room as Olivia is yelling at Nell because there's chalk writing on the wall saying, "Welcome home, Nell." And Nell is crying, telling her mother she didn't do it. It's not her fault. And when Olivia leaves and Nell is crying and telling Theo, "I didn't do it, I'm not responsible," Theo touches the wall and knows that it wasn't Nell, that Nell didn't do this, but she'll help her clean it up. And she says something along the lines of, "I don't know why Mom's mad. This wallpaper's coming down anyway," and she pulls wallpaper, and that's when she says she sees the help portion. It was hidden beneath the wallpaper. So what was on there had been on there for years, hidden away. They experienced actual phenomenon that they can live with and recite, or I should say cite. Olivia eventually tells Theo that their family, the women in their family, have a history of knowing things. That the fact that Theo is always cold, and that she wears long sweaters and tries to keep her hands covered, it is something that her grandmother went through as well. And she says that she herself, her migraines allow her to see things. Olivia knows that there are other people in that house that cannot be seen. She says Shirley wakes up, she talks in her sleep, so she doesn't remember the things that she says. She's only told them. So Shirley's can put it aside easier, but she knows that Nell and the broken neck lady, that is a real thing. And in this moment, she doesn't think Theo is ready to hear much more, but gifts her daughter gloves. This is an act, so we're led to believe this whole time. So we started with none of this is real, to Mom saying, "No, this is real. I see the ghost. I know you feel things, and you have to wear these gloves until you're ready to explore it and use this power and use this gifts. And your sisters aren't there yet. Shirley probably never will be. Nell, it's just going to depending on how she grows." But then there's mold. The house is infected. The vanity that belonged to Poppy, when Stephen paints it, he doesn't know, he doesn't see, he doesn't get underneath to see that there's mold. So in the ghost story, in what we're shown in the timey-wimey way, it is either real or it is all a hallucination caused by the mold that has infected this house. That is what 2018 says. 59 and 63 say it is more than likely in our minds. We are seeing these things because we think we should be seeing these things. Because of the atmosphere, because of the stories, and sadly, one woman has been pushed too far. She was too delicate. She wasn't strong enough. 99 says, "Here is a clear, concise story. This woman is not insane. She is strong, and she sacrifices herself for the safety of," at the point of when the story ends, sadly, Luke has died, where he doesn't die in 59 or 63, but Nell sacrifices herself to fight the spirit of Hugh Crane and save Dr. Morrow and save Theo. 2018 says there is a very strong possibility that these ghosts are real. We are all experiencing these things. Here is the clear, hard evidence. But maybe, just maybe, This mold has gotten into all of our minds. Sadly, your mother's the most. And we can write off all of these incidents. It is an interesting thing to read and watch how storytelling has changed over the years. How different people interpret one story, and how they believe a wider audience wants that story interpreted for them as well. Rather, it is with a very pretty bookend or with an ellipses, with 3 little dots letting us think for themselves. Alright, so thank you for visiting my geekdom. We are at an hour and a half just over, so I'm going to take a bit of a break and turn this into that 2-part episode that I mentioned, so that we can dig deeper into these 4 different retellings. Again, the aim of this is to find out from my perspective of the 3 outside of the original 59 book, which one expresses the intent of the book and Shirley Jackson the best. Not which is the actual best and should be hailed by everybody, but which I believe retells the purpose and point and answers the questions, or asks the questions, that Shirley Jackson intended. Thank you for visiting, and I'll see you in the next video.